Okay, welcome everyone. It's October 16th, time for our Park and Recreation Committee meeting. We'll go through the roll call here by just introducing yourself.
Yes.
Amanda.
Amanda Cahill.
Dawn Wittenberg.
Terry Cope.
Larry Schultz.
Mary Larson. Jeanette June.
Okay, and Alyssa's here as well as the staff person. So with that, we will now go to the petitions, proclamations, suggestions, or complaints from citizens, committee members, or staff. Anybody have anything?
I do not.
I do have one thing. I noticed in the city council minutes, there was a review of a new development and, or several new developments actually. And in the past, this committee has early on reviewed those and taken a look at it from a park perspective, like where do the trails go? How do they tie into the entire trail system? Look at the overall park plan and review, what the park plan is, if it's in the right place or not. Kind of do a deep dive. We know that that information's been helpful to the planning committee and ultimately to the council. And at times, the staff is, Ann had brought the information, said here's what the thinking is, and I'd say 75% of the time it's probably the way we go. Other times there's questions raised, and I think that's helped in presenting things to the planning committee, our planning commission, and also the city council, and help staff because those questions may come up again later. And I noticed that hasn't been done since Ann has left.
If I may address that, Chair, thank you for raising that concern, and we definitely appreciate the feedback. I will note on the most recent developments that have come through, if you look at the last council meeting, you might see Brookmore or Hunter's Brook. Those are all developments that the committee has reviewed in the past. They have taken a little bit of a step back, or they've been amended slightly, but those are all things that the committee has looked at in either within this last year, or because some of them have even been further pushed back within the last 2 years. So we definitely will continue to keep this committee as part of that process. We find that really important to make sure that we have many eyes looking at our developments, especially in our open space and our trails and all of our park amenity pieces. So absolutely we'll continue to keep you engaged in those.
Okay, I believe there was one new one in there that I hadn't even heard of before.
Yeah, the Huntersbrook Creek is actually part of the Huntersbrook edition, but they had to do some rearranging. So they just kind of listed it. They were going to call it Huntersbrook, I believe, first or second or third edition, but they ended up, because it was a small parcel, they ended up calling it Huntersbrook Creek, just to separate it between the two. So again, part of that larger look of development in the Huntersbrook field, but sort of new.
Okay, I just think it's important that, we have those. I think we all take our job seriously and we want to be helpful. And I think that helps us do our job, and the council, I think, expects of us to take a deep dive into those things. And I know the planning commission looks at it, I know the council looks at it, but they're looking at a broader scope of things. And when I think they've taken it for granted over the last few years that we've taken for granted, it's not the right word, but I think they know that we've taken a deep dive into it before. So if we aren't doing that, they need to know that as well, so they can ask more questions and take a closer look at it. So just for your information, I guess.
Absolutely. And I don't believe we'd change the process as current. I think we'd continue to keep the committee engaged in that regard related to new developments. It's really important to have, again, multiple eyes, especially the Parks Committee's eyes on those areas.
Okay, thanks. Any other comments, questions?
Well, a follow-up to that. So seeing that there is this new addition, can you take that as an action item to fill us in on that development in the park by next meeting? Can we add that to our agenda?
Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely add that to the next agenda. If the committee agrees, I'd like a review of Hunter's Brook and maybe some of Brookmore, some of the developments that might have come through over the last couple of years, just to give a nice recap of where we are in the development, what we're looking at on the park side, the trail side, the sidewalk side. I'd be happy to.
Yeah, well, I think what I heard Larry ask was, detailed information on this specific new development, right?
Yeah.
So we don't know that we necessarily need to look in the past, but
Any changes
Yeah.
that take place or any new developments?
Absolutely. We can definitely do an overview of the ones that have just come through. I don't believe there's any changes to the park itself, but we can definitely just look at overview of the changes. But they have been approved by city council at this point, so I just want to make that clear. We wouldn't be able to make any recommendations or changes.
Yeah, maybe we just going forward then for new ones. I mean, if it's actions already taken, there's not, I mean, it's done. So, but future ones, I think it's important early on. And I think that helps the developer too in their work. And there's times that we've suggested that maybe the trail go a different place, and that was taken into consideration, and through discussion, that has taken place. Again, I think it's just helpful overall, so we don't end up with trail dead ends or things that, questions people bring up. We're people in the community, and we may see things different than, I think staff does a really good job of, looking at things, but sometimes from a community perspective, others have made comments, and we've had good discussions. Sometimes things have changed, sometimes they haven't after clarifications made. But if we have some questions, I'm guessing other people in the community might have them as well. So I think that just makes for a better product for everybody down the road. Okay, anything else? Yes.
If you wouldn't mind, Chair, committee members, I do have something just to briefly cover with you. Our communications team has taken a real good look at our city parks, and specifically when it comes to how we present them digitally on our city's website. So something I just want to show you, and feel free to take a look at these on your own time. Or if you have any questions here, happy to answer them. But on the city's website now, we have individual park pages. I'll just use one as an example. I'll grab Deer Run 1, because we're going to be talking about this later today. But really featuring each of the parks, showcasing what amenities they have right up front, what type of playground equipment they have, what type of parking, if parking, what kind of neighborhood, just to really give the neighborhood, people that might be potentially visiting that park, a good overview of what they can expect before they actually visit the park themselves. So again, it's a great way to digitally do a parks tour if you're interested in this, looking at all of our parks. But again, I'll have any questions for the committee if there's any. All right. Thank you.
Okay. Next on the agenda are approval of the minutes, and we have two sets of minutes. One from May 15th, 2023, and another for August 21st, 2023. Need a motion to approve or amend?
I move to approve the minutes from the Monday, May 15th meeting.
Okay,
I second.
okay,
and I would move to approve the minutes from the August 21st meeting.
okay, let's wait a second. We'll do one at a time. Thank you. Any further comments on the motion's been made and second? Any other comments before we go on? Okay, all in favor of approving the May 15th, 2023 minutes signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say nay. Okay, motions approved. Okay, Don?
Okay, I would move to approve the minutes from the August 21st, 2023 meeting.
Okay.
I'll second that.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded to approve the August 21st, 2023 meeting minutes. Any comments before we vote? Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Okay, motion carried. Thank you. Okay, next on our agenda, new business. Consider names for trail routes. Oh, wait, I got 2 sheets of paper here.
My
Excuse me.
apologies, Chair, on that one.
Okay, 6.1, review mid-year Parks and Recreation Committee report. Let's do that.
Yes, I think that sounds like a great idea. So thank you, committee. So we are nearing halfway through the year for our committees. I know it seems weird to say that in October, but our committees officially start in April, so that we're reaching that 6-month point. And starting this meeting, what we wanted to do is review our mid-year committee report. This report details the 2023 committee work plan. This committee created that earlier this year, and it was formally adopted or approved by City Council in April of 2023. And the purpose of this work plan, just to give a brief overview, is to really establish some transparency around what the committee does. This is required of all our citizens committees and commissions. And it also maps out what each of the groups is expected to do or accomplish and work throughout the course of the year. Council is also received to ask that mid-year update, hence the reason we're reviewing this now. And graciously, Chair Schultz has agreed to present the mid-year committee report to Council at their next meeting, which will be October 23rd. And before we bring it to Council, we just wanted to go through it with the committee as a whole, just to see if there's any changes to the mid-year report, to the work plan, if there's anything we should add, anything we missed, or just ensure its accuracy overall. So with that, we're going to go through each of the line items, just making sure that everything seems good. And if there's any questions or anything, please feel free to just chime in, because it can be pretty informal.
Great.
Yeah. So going to pull it up. Here we go. So the committee work plan was adopted with 3 different sections. We have the Parks and Trails section, then we have the Recreation Center section, and then lastly, we have recreation programs. You know, we have at least 13 on just Parks and Trails, and I won't go through them in heavy detail just because we want to go home sometime tonight. But if you have any questions, if I'm overviewing things too quickly, do not hesitate to just say something. We're happy to discuss it further in detail. So first I want to say, the first item on here is complete the playground replacement at Deer Run, and this is specifically relating to Deer Run 1 playground, and we will be discussing this in our next line item, but we did submit a grant application to assist with funding for this park. We were over budget when it came to the playground replacement. Previously it was approved in the budget for $75,000 for this playground replacement. We were quite a bit more than that, so this grant, I think we received close to $21,000. Help offset that cost. So we are making progress in that, and we're anticipating replacement to happen in 2024. Complete Lakeside Estates Phase 2. We are finally through the construction piece of that, and now we're just looking at some reseeding and trees because of the drought conditions. It really hit hard on a lot of our construction projects. The pickleball courts also had this, so now we're working with the contractor to reseed that. But everything else, the infrastructure is put into the ground.
Yeah, so I did have a comment on that one, just reading through, kind of based on survey results. There were concerns brought up around the new ball field conditions of that park, so I don't know, like, if that's important to note here, that like citizens are concerned about, like, yes, it's a new park, but oh my, the conditions aren't that great, so I don't know if that needs to be noted so that council is aware of it.
Is that a function of what Alyssa just talked about, is it needs reseeding? And
Yeah, I think that should be spelled out, because vegetation to me isn't
Isn't the grass, like, their the concerns were like very specific. It was like, it's just a bunch of weeds, like, it was very like concerning, like, it looks horrible, like, this is not a successful project. So like, I just wouldn't want council to hear that and be like, well, Park and Rec, you said it was done. So
Yeah, and I live near that park, and I can affirm that it is a bunch of weeds, and I understand that it has to do with they had seeded the grass, and of course, because of the drought that we had, the grass didn't take, and it's overrun by weeds. So
okay.
we needed to reseed that, and they have a plan to do that. So I think even just tweaking the language on this to mention that the grass needs to be reseeded. But yeah, it hasn't been usable at all this year because of the drought conditions.
Okay.
committee members with something to this effect, and obviously we can play around with some words, but just hearing what everyone is saying, the vegetation and overgrowth the vegetation and grass or weeds overgrowth will be reviewed and fixed by the contractor. And obviously we can play around with some of that, or addressed by the contractor.
I think that's fine, and I'll make a point of it when I present it too. So, one way or the other.
Yeah, if it is something that the contractors promised to, keep addressing or,
Yes, and I should make a note of that. It is all within the contractor's hands at this point, related to the vegetation. We typically have a warranty period when we bring these new parks in, of typically 1 year. So something like this, we would have them continuously look at and reseed if needed.
When we're talking about vegetation, are we just talking about grass, or are we talking about plants, or what are we?
Mostly this area is specific towards grass, specifically in the ball field area, but there's also tree replacements, and we just like to use the word vegetation as it kind of encompasses all.
Well, you have vegetation and tree, why don't we just put grass, then people know what we're talking about?
Yeah, yeah,
We can make that adjustment,
All right, thanks.
of course.
yeah.
Complete the construction of pickleball courts at the Recreation Center. So these are regarding the outdoor pickleball courts at D Town Park, and these were completed as in July of 2023. Number 4 is complete the Greencrest sidewalks construction. This project is on its final stages. There are a few things we're waiting for our utility providers to finish up before we can completely close out that or finish the project and then close it out. So we're still waiting some of that. And then number 5, and I'm going to make a note at this, but it is to complete the Bavaria Trail East construction. That project is finished, and I will make that adjustment to A.
I have a question on that one. So I noticed that the crosswalk is still missing, meaning the white block markings that go across Bavaria over to 18. So, for example, if you want to look at a comparison, it would be similar to the crosswalk at Bavaria and 86th Street. It's like very clearly the white blocks over across the pavement, as well as the pedestrian yellow signs that tell cars on Bavaria to stop. Because right now, like the sidewalks, stops right there, so you'd have to cross Bavaria to continue down towards 86th. So I just didn't know if that's part of the contract.
I can definitely follow up with our engineer who's managing that and
Okay.
see if that's part of it and make sure it is if it's completed, if it's part of the project plan, for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, the intersection at Bavaria and 86 is just a good example of the difference.
Wonderful. All right, number 6, which is to complete the skate park relocation. The skate park was previously located at D-Town where the pickleball courts are, and as part of the pickleball court being built there, we wanted to find a new location for where the skate park was going to be. So that was completed earlier this summer in July of 2023, and that park was relocated to Lions Park. Number 7 is review and evaluate technology for parks specifically for security and video. And I will note that security and video and key card readers have been installed at certain key city parks where critical infrastructure is located. So Rhapsody is a good example of that, where our booster station is. And then additionally, key card readers have been replaced at Lions Park Pavilion just to migrate us to the city's system because they were on a separate system whatsoever. And I will say for this piece specifically, we are relying on fiber connections to areas. So the reason we don't see this list being bigger than it is because we do not have fiber connections to those areas. And we'll wait until we receive those secure connections, and then at that time, then we'll bring those or consider bringing those onto some sort of formalized security.
Yeah, that brings up a question I'd wondered about, security cameras at Wasserman.
Yes, and that's the same thing, a committee chair, we're waiting for fiber connection. Otherwise, we're gonna be relying on some sort of cell service or some possible satellite internet, and that's not very secure from one standpoint, but also not very reliable.
What's the likelihood of getting fiber to that park? I mean, it's not I mean, those neighborhoods up there probably already have fiber. It's, you know, half-mile into the shelter. I mean, that's gonna cost a bundle to get that hooked up.
Yeah, all great questions. And we are talking to CarverLink, which is the city's internet provider, but also they have been working on Carver Connect project, which is a project within Carver County to connect up the entire city and county areas. You may have seen it in the newspapers. So in addition to connecting all residents up to fiber, they're also working with cities to connect all city infrastructure up to fiber as well. So it would be part of that deal. And as soon as it's done, then we'll definitely want to add some sort of key cards to our bathrooms at a place like Wasserman. Not only is it nice on a security standpoint, but then we can schedule them to be locked and unlocked during park hours as well. So. Number 8, utilize Met Council water efficiency grant to replace toilets at Lions Park. So the water efficiency grant, into looking at this in further detail, is to provide the city's funds to offer rebates or grants to residents to purchase their own water efficiency appliances and fixtures. So the park project of incorporating this and bringing it to Lions didn't qualify under this grant program. So instead, we switched gears on this grant program, talked to the Met Council, and now we are providing rebates to residents, which we've done in the past for things like high efficiency dishwashers, refrigerators, maybe not refrigerators, but other types of fixtures, as well as high efficiency sprinkler heads. So.
Okay, just a step back on that one. If, have the toilets been replaced at Lions Park? Because that's what was under our purview.
That is not, because we were planning on utilizing this grant fund to fund that project, and we unfortunately did not have the funding allocated for that.
Okay, so we haven't met this particular goal.
No, no.
How much, I mean, how much are we talking cost-wise?
Probably close to the $30,000 mark, but I'm not 100% sure on the exact number. Part of that is you would have to reconstruct areas of the bathrooms itself. So if we would do something like this because of the cost, I think we'll be looking at doing the whole shelter as a whole. There's other issues to that shelter, roof replacement, there's some structural issues. So I think having a larger capital project would probably be the best use. If we're doing structural wall issues in the bathrooms and redoing some plumbing, we might as well do the rest of the work. That would be up to the committee once we get to that piece.
Okay. One of the things that may have happened in the past, and we don't have to do things the way they were done in the past, but when there's an issue like that, I don't remember anything about a grant when we were talking about this, which is fine. I think it's prudent to go after all sorts of dollars, but if the goal is to replace the toilets and plan A falls through, then we need to have a plan B. And sometimes we've talked about, you know, where does this fall in the importance of things, and maybe it's high, maybe it's not. We've had that discussion, and sometimes we've said, okay, that's a larger need at this time than another item that's on the plan, and we've talked about changing things around in order and postponing other things. So in the future, it might be a good idea to bring those things to this group for that discussion. And again, it may or may not change, but at least we've had the discussion about it.
Yeah, we've been able to reprioritize the list. So some things move up the list, some things move down the list, so.
And again, this may or may not have, changed at all, but it'd be nice to have that discussion, I think.
Perfect. Number 9 is continue the Emerald Ash Borer Management Plan for 2023 to 2025. And Rainbow Tree Care, the city's contracted EAB treatment company, did finish their treatment of public trees earmarked for the 2023 season. And obviously, they always come to this committee to do their annual report, and we'll have them scheduled for January or February of next year. And then additionally, city staff applied for Minnesota Department of Natural Resources grants to fund the 2024 and 2025 EAB treatments. Number 10, identify grant opportunities for parks and trails. And I think we've talked a lot about grant opportunities in the last 2 items, so that's something we'll continue to do. And if the committee members, if you see any grant opportunities that you think might fit any park initiatives, whether this committee manages it or not, please feel free to always pass it along to staff.
This is great, number 10, only that came up in survey results is that people were commenting on, could we get some more shade trees in parks or trails? So that kind of addresses a desire.
How much was the grant for?
So we have 2 grants with the Minnesota DNR currently. The one with the EAB treatments was about 35,000 that we submitted for. And then the one with the shade tree grant, this is where we would contract the removal of the trees, the purchase of the new trees, and the replanting of the new trees, plus additional trees in some of the areas that we've realized are missing some additional shade areas. And that one's closer to the 45,000 amount.
Along with that, in the survey, some people, some of the comments were the opposite, and that some of the trees were overgrowing the trails, and like bike riders couldn't get underneath, you know, they were hanging so low. And I don't know if part of those grants or money is for trimming, or how does that work?
Yeah, that's a great question, and this would not do for trimming. This grant, both of these grants are really trying to preserve and enhance shade within urban areas and areas that are suburban as well. So this is really built on trying to grow more trees in areas. And when we're looking at this grant specifically, we were really focusing on our park areas, not necessarily our trail areas. Obviously, we have to do replanting. If there's dead trees, if there's diseased trees, we included that in our index. But when it comes to adding new trees, we were really focused on some of our parks and our outlots.
Jeanette, I would think that some of that might be in the regular maintenance when that might, you know, hopefully staff's taking a look at that and putting it on somebody's list to get to when they have the opportunity.
Yes.
I've noticed that myself a few times.
And since we're here, and I was going to mention this during the survey piece, but it doesn't matter anyway, any complaints or any negative feedback we received from the survey related to maintenance, we did provide that to our public works team and our parks team to make sure that they were addressing right away, at least the things that we could address right away.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Of course. So number 11, work with local agencies and partners on parks and trail opportunities. I think this committee is a great example in the work that you're doing with the Senior Advisory Committee. We just started that with the Trails Project, and obviously as we move forward with that, we'll continue to branch out and continue to partner on some of those projects as much as possible. Is there anything we want to add on this one? This one's a little vague.
I struggle with this one because I'm really feeling that this is putting us in a tough position, and that it's like putting the cart in front of the horse, because from the survey results, only one person mentioned like identifying trail routes. Everyone else mentioned trail gaps. So like, even as a citizen myself, I would be really disappointed if funds were given for marking a trail route when there are so many gaps that people are begging for. Trail gap connections to be made that people are begging for. And we don't really have any, when we reviewed those trail walking routes, there's not any real strong, in my opinion, like strong candidates that are like, oh, this is a no-brainer. It was like, you'd have to drive to another neighborhood, park somewhere within a different neighborhood to get on those identified routes. So I just don't know if we can pause this one until we review survey results or other opportunities.
I think that at the last meeting, I think we had a discussion and we decided to move forward with a senior group to do that. I know what you're saying. I think, and I may be wrong here, but I don't think this is a huge cost involved in this. Might be some staff time. And I agree, I'd rather have those trail gaps filled or completed too, but we're talking, you know, 100,000, 250,000, $1 million for trail gap constructions is a lot more. I was flabbergasted when I heard how much trails cost. So I think you make a good point, but I think they're two separate things. And I think the importance would be, if we move ahead with this, that we communicate, you know, the reason why we're doing this and the cost of it compared to trails or that. I think we can address that. But I know what you're saying. But I think if we wait till we get all the trail gaps done, we're not going to get anything done because we don't have the funds to do it right now, unfortunately. Then we need to find ways to get it done. And we can talk about that later in our discussion about the survey, but.
I kind of agree, Amanda, I kind of see what you're referring to, but because it sounds like we're creating, by identifying walking trail routes, like we're creating more walking trail routes. And maybe if we just change that wording to that, instead of identifying by putting up signs, because I mean, that's what I understood a lot of it was, is just identifying for the public the existing walking trail routes, which would involve signage rather than creating walking trail routes, because that's not kind of what our understanding.
Yeah, I just don't want anyone to be disappointed. Like, and I know we've talked about this before, but like if you go to Chaska, you know, and I've seen the signs, I've seen the routes, because like just neighboring Chaska, once you go from one park, it is crazy how many trails they have going through all their neighborhoods, right? So like those wayfinding signs are almost necessary so that you can find, you know, your route back. But I just, like I said, I just don't want anyone to feel disappointed that we spent time on this when they're asking for other things for us to spend our time on.
I think good points all around. Alyssa, I would suggest that we change, as suggested, change the wording on that, and I'll try to make a point when we present it to the council that this doesn't address the trail gap issue, but this is kind of another smaller project. I'll try to highlight that.
And we can modify the wording on the staff end. That's easy done.
Yeah, I think the word creating causes confusion.
Right, yeah.
Because if we say that, you know, you're going to get the people from those areas that can't get to the main trails going to say, well, why are we doing this? Because can't we do our trail? We have all these people can't get to where. Words matter. So, okay.
Number 12, implement Friends of Wasserman Lake Preserve. That was approved by this committee and city council in 2022, and staff continuously seeks applications for that. Unfortunately, we have not been successful.
So
it exists, but we don't have anybody on it.
Yes.
So what do we need to do? That begs the question, what do we need to do differently to get some people to help? I mean,
And if the committee would like, we can add it to a future meeting to discuss ways that we can improve that.
okay,
That sounds good.
okay.
Number 13, identify opportunities for volunteers within our Parks and Recreation Department. So the city launched its Volunteer Victoria program in 2020, and we've had several opportunities within the parks-related area, and we have several volunteers that really do help with maintenance or overall cleanup or beautifying our city parks. So I think that's something that the city does extremely well on, and I think as a community that the community should just be very proud of their neighbors. All right, section 2.
Can we list any of their volunteer things that they've done?
Depends on the volunteer group. So that's a great question. Like I said, it really depends on the volunteer group. Some people don't necessarily like to be highlighted. We have talked about doing volunteer spotlights, and we do them periodically in our biweekly blog, where we'll just highlight some projects people are doing. If they're comfortable with it, use their names and sometimes photos.
So is that a group then that you're always looking for, like scout groups or church groups, or is it a commitment that, like, it's an individual committing to like go to that park on a weekly basis and check on it?
That's a great question. And I think it depends on the volunteer opportunity because we do not want to turn away volunteers at all. So if we have a group that's looking for a one-time gig, we do have group cleanup projects within our park system that you can sign up, do a large scout group if it happens to be scouts or whatever happens to be, and just clean up the park, and we will help coordinate and help bring some of those bags and everything that you need. However, we do have a lot of volunteers that are adopting a park, more or less to say, where they have taken on the responsibility to clean up this park and nurture it and make it their own and make it beautiful for the city. I think a great example of specifically this piece is Kirklocken. We have a family, a husband and wife team that are the Uptons. They live at the Steiger Lake condos here, and they are continuously out at Kirklocken Park, cleaning it up, remulching it, adding new flowers, just really making it look nice. So yes, we have a wide variety.
Okay.
Yep.
I've got a group with, connected with that with the garden club, because the thistle at the rec center has just taken over. And it's like, we took a look at that and went, the five of us, I mean, you know, we were looking for a one-time group to come in, like a Girl Scout troop or something, and that would be to clean that up and to put some preventative down for next spring. So I don't know how we connect with that, but we definitely need that.
We can advertise that.
Yes,
All right, let's connect after this.
Yeah,
We'll
yeah.
take this offline, but we can advertise that.
yes.
So going over to the rec center, we have as number one, evaluate staffing model for the front desk. And in July, if you've been to the rec center first, if you've been there, we have a new front desk system, and that has really helped us reevaluate this front desk area. So in July, and what kind of kickstarted this, we did rearrange the staffing model for this area. So we created a guest service lead to manage our front desk. If you've been there, you've known Brenda because she's our daytime person. So she's been promoted to our guest service lead, and she is managing the front desk team and working with hiring. We've also changed and modified those positions to provide some overlap. So instead of having one shift and then another, we created a 15-minute or a 30-minute during our peak hours where we have staff overlap. So we can have two people sitting in those chairs. One person can finish counting the cash drawer, finish whatever they need to complete out their shift, while another person is greeting customers, making sure people are checked in and whatnot. Dealing with trash as well is kind of one of those things that we don't necessarily always have time to do because we're always trying to rush in or rush out of that space. And then we also created a kind of a new time shift for our positions, which has seemed to really help with retention as well. Number two is complete roof rehabilitation, my apologies. That is currently ongoing. So in July, the school district let us know that they've begun work on the rec center roof, and we have continued that on. They're supposed to have a majority of that completed, if not completed, by the end of this month. So we're knocking on wood that we keep the rain away and that we hopefully get the roof completely free of any leaks.
Nice.
Number three, promote the Vic Fit, or the fitness program campaign, to increase participation in the program. You may have seen that in 2023 there was Vic Fit apparel created, and I think that was very early on in 2023. So you can buy t-shirts or tank tops or gear that promote that brand or that identity. And then another thing that I didn't put on here, but something that we included, is at the farmers market this year, the Vic teachers came out and they were giving away a 1-week free trial. They were showing people what activities they do and really promoting that program.
Have they, have the apparel sold?
Depends on the size. Yes, and we're looking at ordering more, or just really thinking through now that it's selling, how does that storefront look like? How do we really want to market that and make that go the way we want it to go?
Okay, just a step back on the roof rehabilitation. Is that just fixing the roof, or is it completely redoing it?
It's completely redoing it for a majority of the building. The west rink was redone last year, so that part is not being touched. It's redoing the rest of the structure.
Okay.
Yep. So it is taking a while, but definitely needed. We were having issues the last few years, but specifically last year, where the sealant would break just because of the freeze-thaw cycle that we saw over this last winter, which created a ton of leaks within the building. And we were able to push this up from 2024 to 2023 just because of the need.
And you can reduce the budget on buckets for next year.
You're absolutely right there. So number 4 is evaluate cardio equipment to determine the replacement timeframe. So as part of the city's asset, our capital asset policy, the timeframe for athletic equipment replacement is 10 years. And the last cardio equipment was replaced in 2019. So I think we're still a few years out to really evaluating what we need. Obviously, we want to do it a couple of years before we actually go out for bid on equipment. But I think we're a little premature in 2023 for that.
If I could just make a recommendation that you ask the personal trainers for their feedback. I just know that my personal trainer likes to be included on that to get their opinions on that, so.
Absolutely.
They know a lot, so.
Perfect.
So just back to this one, I'm thinking about presentation to the city council. If our goal is to evaluate, to determine the time frame, this isn't clear whether we've done that or not.
I'd make the recommendation, Chair, that the committee formally or informally postpone this item until a later date. That makes more sense for the city's policy.
Okay.
And mark it as complete at that point.
So remove it from this report, because we're not actually taking any action on it.
I think we need to address it because it's in our work plan.
Okay.
We can't just cross it off. We have to explain why it's off. So I think we just can say we're going to move this item for consideration next year, if everybody's good with that.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Number 5 is promote the 20th anniversary of the Recreation Center, and the Recreation Center did hold its 20th anniversary party, or birthday party, in March of 2023 this year. Number 6, purchase a vending machine for the new pickleball courts through a SHIP grant. This was specific to a SHIP grant, making if we were able to actually move forward with this project or not. And we did try to apply for the SHIP grant funds. However, the grant was not accepted. This is not something they would utilize those grant funds for.
I think we mentioned this at the last meeting, but what's the cost of a vending machine?
I don't
Approximately.
have that cost number at the top of my head. My apologies. That's something I can definitely bring back to the next committee, if the committee is interested in still taking a look at this project.
I don't know if we are.
It's
or not.
expensive, I remember that.
It's not 2,000, it's more like 20.
It was a big number,
Okay, so,
that's my recollection.
Yeah, and I just from my own experience, I would not
No,
put any
no.
effort into purchasing a pickleball vending machine.
okay, well, we didn't get the grant, we'll say we didn't get the grant, move on.
And move on, yeah, and not pursue
Yes.
any other avenues.
Yeah, okay.
Not necessary.
All right, last section, recreation programs. So develop and implement year-round recreation programs for all ages. So the city hosts over 300 recreational activities and programs in 2023 as of October, totaling over 2,000 participants. Additionally, the city established a 55-plus table of contents in their Parks and Recreation brochure and created a 55-plus category in their program materials. So those are new things that are happening within our recreation side. Number 2 is special event planning and implementation. In addition to the 300 recreational programs, we also have 34 events that are hosted in 2023, and that includes our Donut in Victoria series, which is new this year, our truck rodeo, our pop-up splash pad, the family night outing, which is now called Puppets in the Park, our Light Up Victoria, winter lighting event, and then of course, our favorited Concerts in the Park series.
I do have a question on point number 1. So 300 programs, just about the data, 300 recreational activities and programs, totaling over 2,000 participants. That means that there's 6 or 7 participants for each activity. that number doesn't seem right. So if you count like a recreational activity as being the concert in the park or the, really, I mean, most of these activities would have significantly more than 6 or 7 people. So I'm curious about how you came up with 2,000 participants.
That's a great question. That all comes from our Civic Rec program software for anyone that checks in or signs up for a program. We just take the numbers based on that.
Well, so like events, number 2, concerts in the park, no one's actually registering for it.
Yes.
Got it.
You know, because they're free events, or like the truck rodeo, it's just advertised and people go. It's not required to sign up. So the 2,000 is the sign up.
Or recreation
Yeah.
programs, not events. Those are 2 separate line items.
Still seems like a small number, but doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. So
No,
would it help to say registered events, or, well, it does say over 300 registered recreational activities, or?
Makes you wonder if some of the activities may not be effective or well-attended.
Yeah, that was,
Maybe a review of the classes or whatever.
And if that's something we want to talk about for the 2024 work plan, is doing a recreation program audit, I think that makes perfect sense for this committee to do. And I can put it on our checklist for 2024 when we go through this again.
I think that makes sense to do. I don't think we've done that. We've just, my 5 years on this, we've just seen numbers, you know, here's this month compared to last month, or this year compared to last year. Might be good to take a look at that. And I think the survey kind of, or several comments about, you know,
Timing,
people wanting other things, and so it might be,
timing of classes.
yeah, it might be a good time to look at it for our work plan next year, so.
That sounds wonderful. All right. So number 3, program 45 community gardens. And we did rent out our 45 garden plots in the 2023 season. This is probably one of our most favorited program that the city holds, and we continuously have a waiting list for our community gardens. So again, thinking about our future of our parks, thinking about what our needs are, obviously this is something we continuously have people knocking on our door for. So just want to make that note that these are very popular. We have great attendance and they're really well loved. Number 4, complete brochures, social media, and website for advertising programs. This is something our communications department has really taken a big role in this last year. And we did hire a second full-time communications person who is really main part when it comes to Parks and Recreation is the advertising and marketing of the Victoria Recreation Center, as well as any sort of Parks and Recreation programming and events. So if you see those come through, that would be our communications development team now. Number 5, a complete facility scheduling of gyms, fields, and shelter rentals. That's something also this department continues to manage, and we have a variety of them that are rented, including our fields, soccer fields, baseball fields, in addition to all of our park shelters. So in addition to that, because there is such a need, because we don't necessarily have the staff time or capability to really manage that, we are looking at interviewing a recreation coordinator position that will help have a huge focus on facility management and rentals. Number 6 is continue partnerships with sports associations, schools, other recreation agencies, contracted vendors, and volunteers. And this is something we're continuously doing as a city to coordinate with our sports associations. And again, that kind of goes up into the field scheduling, is really working with them, making sure that they're able to hold practices, tournaments, games, whatever have you, and make sure they have the right amenities for those spaces. The next is promote growth opportunities for pickleball and plan for the grand opening of the new courts. Well, I will say the grand opening kind of had a hiccup because of the weather, but we were still able to hold it in August of 2023. And of course, we're always looking for more ways to entice people to play the wonderful sport of pickleball.
Just have Jeanette teaching courses.
I'm sorry, what?
Just have Jeanette teaching how to play.
Yeah, that's one of my volunteer opportunities. I would say that I know as pickleball grows and the use of the gymnasium increase, one of the things that people would be looking for is the creation of some leagues at the rec center, much like Chaska has, or that they have somebody that coordinates league play, particularly for the outdoor courts, maybe next year.
Sounds wonderful. And I think that kind of goes into that auditing, that program and event auditing that we talked about, is what are we missing? And I think leagues are maybe some of those, but I think that's going to be a long discussion, but I'm excited for it. And then last but not least, hire high-quality seasonal staff for our recreation programs. And in the season, in the summer, we're always looking for part-time seasonal staff. I will say that the job market is really hard right now, especially for those part-time seasonal positions. But every year we get great candidates, and we have wonderful young students that join our Parks and Rec department for that time being. This year we were able to hire 5 to assist with programming. And with that, do we have any additions, corrections, other than what we've discussed?
Just have a suggestion for when we do this for next year for the goals. I think we mentioned it when we went through this last time. I think it would be helpful to define a little better how we know that we've accomplished the goal. You know, yeah, how do we measure these things? You know, by when, how many, whatever. But I think we can maybe improve that a little bit so we can show that we have indeed accomplished something.
Absolutely.
Okay. Any other comments on this before we want to recommend this report? Do we need a motion, or we're just going to we don't need a motion?
We do not need a motion on this one, Chair.
Okay, I'll try to include our gist of what we said this evening and some of those key points when I make the presentation.
And Larry, when will the presentation be at the?
October 23rd City Council meeting at 6:30, or shortly thereafter.
Okay.
So you're all welcome to come if you'd like. I know some of you have come to provide moral support. You don't need to come, but if you want to come, that's great.
I find it interesting to hear what questions the council may have, and I trust Larry implicitly. It's not that I question what you're presenting, but it gives me
Right.
some useful things to think about.
And that's helpful, having several sets of ears there too to hear that. So, appreciate you coming. Okay, next, we have the Deer Run 1 Park Playground Project.
Well, wonderful. For this presentation, I am going to bring you up to speed on the Deer Run 1 Playground project. We briefly talked about it, but just wanted to give you a real overhaul of what's been happening and what we're looking for. So just to recap, Deer Run 1 is a park about 1.23 acres in size. It's a neighborhood park that serves the Deer Run community. It contains a full-size basketball court, a tennis court, and a playground. It also has some key amenities, benches, trash bins, picnic tables, and it includes a parking lot. The playground was installed in 1992. So it is significant of age. Our typical replacement for those is 20 years, so we are past the usual time frame that we look at for playground replacement. So the city did have in its budget and was reviewed by City Council and the Parks Committee last year for replacement of this park, and it was $75,000 that was budgeted for 2023 to complete this project. Like I mentioned, it was over budget when we spent time looking at replacing the playground equipment. Additionally, this playground is sitting on pea gravel or pea rock, which is not the city's standard. We like to at least get to wood chips or wood fiber, and then the barrier around it is wood, which is rotting. So we'd like to get that to our standard of concrete. With that, the playground equipment and all those extra amenities, it did go over the $75,000. So we did take a hold on the playground replacement. Usually we try and get started on this February, March, just to really nail down what we're looking for and get construction started sooner than later. But because of the cost, we took a pause to really assess and determine what we were about to do. So later in the year, in September, we were able to secure a grant for about $24,000, kind of in between that, to offset some of this cost. And now we're actually going forward with the replacement of, sorry, my slides are getting wonky on me on this screen here. Actually moving forward with the replacement of the playground. So because of the playground being worked on, we are hearing from residents and residents of that neighborhood that they're also looking for something different within that park itself. We are seeing that we have a mix of families of various ages in the area, not always young families, but sometimes a little bit of older families, so they are looking for a more variety, some more innovative ideas in that park. And something specifically that they've asked for is things that really tie that park to the larger neighborhood of Deer Run. Specifically, the example of possibly doing a putting green, a small putting green within that park, or a small mini golf section, not a whole mini golf course, but a mini golf section somewhere in the grass area of the park itself, to really bring some placemaking to the space and really make that park have an identity to the surrounding neighborhood. So because of this request and because we're starting construction and replacing the playground next year, we wanted to engage the Parks Committee to see if having these additional amenities, these additional features would be beneficial to this park. I think on a staff perspective, we like this idea of just having a little bit more to these parks that is a little different. It separates it from our other neighborhood parks and the other Deer Run neighborhood park that's just south of this. We have Deer Run 2, which is primarily just a playground unit. But we wanted to showcase you some examples of what that would look like and really hear from the committee on what your thoughts would be about something like this. So just to give some examples, these are just ideas. Obviously, we didn't spend a ton of time on this because we really wanted some ideas and directions from the committee before we spent significant amount of time on this. But the cost would be dependent on the type, the style, the look of creating this putting green or a mini golf space. And obviously something we'd want to consider is the maintenance. So we'd engage our park staff on something like this, and they've taken a look and they're in favor of this idea just on the initial look. But additionally, making sure it's permanent. As we know, if you allow things to easily be wrecked or disappear, they will disappear and they will be wrecked. So just looking at ways that we can foolproof this as much as possible. So with that, Chair, I will kick it back to you and see what the committee has for ideas and thoughts.
Can you go back to the park picture? So do you have a recommendation of the placement?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I failed to mention that we did have a putting green in this park years and years before. I'm sure if people lived in Victoria, they probably knew about this. And it was, correct me if I'm wrong,
It's right next to the tennis court here.
on this side. Yes.
Did you do a formal survey of the local residents for what they wanted for input? I know the city has done that for other parks before.
Yeah, before we move on to that phase, I think it would just be seeing what the committee's thoughts are. Obviously, the park survey, we heard a lot about new, different types of things in our parks, innovative ideas in our parks, really separating them out. So we kind of took that as something to consider.
So let me clarify my question. I know when we have done like small neighborhood, like Tot Park replacements before, so again, taking a 30-year-old park and replacing it, the city has done a specific survey to the neighbors regarding that specific park, saying, your park is 30 years old, we're planning to replace it, what do you want out of your specific park? So there's specific neighborhood input for that specific park.
Absolutely, and I think
that been done
this,
here?
I think the committee should take a look at this first to see if this is a project even worth pursuing before staff consider doing a survey. And that's something we'd be happy to do.
Okay.
Playground
I think a very good point. I think we found it real helpful if the survey is done
First.
first, and then we have those thoughts and then combine with other things. It's not, here's what we're gonna do, how do you like it? It's, and we haven't always put in things that people want, but we've at least got that input. What we've learned is, in some of the parks in the past, is maybe we had playground equipment. Well, there's no kids in the neighborhood. They'd rather have a basket or a tennis court, or they'd rather have open space. And then that might inform us to suggest that maybe we skip the playground equipment and put a mini golf thing there. And I kind of like the idea of a putting green or something else, or different things in different parks. I think that's a good idea, but it doesn't hurt to ask the question. And I think it's important how we ask the question. We're not asking them to tell us what to put in there. We're just saying, we're in the process of considering all the options, and we'd like to get your input as to what you might like. And then we'll consider those things with the overall city plan and amenities we have different places.
Actually, can I finish kind of my thought with this? So specifically, it sounds like, I don't know if the playground equipment has already been purchased and ordered, but what we have done in previous neighborhood parks has been, so I know this neighborhood, I live in this neighborhood, this playground structure is geared towards like that 2 to 5 year old age. And so if you're surveying the neighbors, they might say, well, 2 to 5 doesn't really work for our neighborhood. We'd rather have a playground structure that targets a 5 to 7 year old or 5 to 9 year old range. So there's that. And again, I do live in the neighborhood. I've heard that there used to be a putting green that was removed because it was decaying. And so for what it's worth, I think if we can add a putting green, I know it would get used all the time.
Yeah, the previous one did not get used at all at least in the time
Because
we've
it was
lived
in
there.
poor condition.
Okay.
Not initially, it wasn't. Yeah.
So maybe in this case, if the equipment's already been purchased before we did the survey, it kind of defeats
Has the
the,
equipment been purchased?
So this is specifically about the putting green section or doing something more creative in the park space. None of those pieces have been purchased. However, the playground equipment with the grant, yes, that has been purchased.
okay.
And I will say that the reason that we've chosen the playground equipment is because of the small footprint of this park, that there was no opportunity to really change the type of equipment, just because of the footprint of the space. As you can see on the map here, we don't have a lot of variety or variety to expand in this space. It's pretty set just based on the footprint of the playground itself.
Again, I'm going to go back to some of the comments that were already made. I think as a park board member, I would like to get input from the community in that area, and as opposed to go ahead and do something, because we've spent a lot of money, and if it's something that's not going to be used, there's a lot of use for those dollars. And I realize we got a grant, but maybe we could use the grant applied for a grant for something else that is needed, or whatever the change would be in that area. So I don't think it hurts, and I think in the survey to get input, I think we can combine both things. If we have a discussion here and we say, well, the putting green sounds like a good idea, I think we put that in the information we send. We're thinking about potentially adding a putting green or a mini golf hole or whatever it is. And do you think it would be used? That might be the question. Not do you want it, but do you think it would be used? Because some people may not want it, but they might feel it's going to be used, and that's the important thing. So I think we can kind of do both things, and I think, it's a little difficult to be asking people after the playground equipment, because I'd be kind of offended by that, and I guess I'm a little disappointed that we haven't had a discussion and had that survey to start with, because that's not how I think we like to operate as a committee. But it is what it is right now, so let's make the best of it, and say you're getting new playground equipment, but here's another thought that we have. Is this something that you feel would be used? If not, what else do you feel if not, what other ideas might you have for this space? And see what we get.
Yeah, I mean, I really like it. I think it's like innovative for offering an activity for older children, right? Like just as its baseline. But if the neighbors hate it, like that would be a disservice to them. So, and in the survey too, it was interesting that people put like, hey, we would rather have had a hockey rink go up here instead of a baseball field. So I agree with serving the specific neighborhood because they might say something that we didn't even think of. Hey, we'd rather have this go up instead of, or we'd rather keep the green space and put in, more picnic tables and a shade, like the shade thing that's at the rec center. We just don't know. So yeah, I think I agree that I'd rather wait on our decision until we hear what the neighborhood wants.
And I think the other thing that I get from the survey is the communication, that I feel like people feel like then they have a voice and that it's being heard if we survey them. And before we move forward, it's like they're at the front of the decision-making rather than kind of lagging behind. So I think it's very important to do that.
Did we redo that tennis court?
Yeah,
Okay.
it gets used a lot.
It does.
All right, so where are we? Do we have a recommendation that we
Survey the
survey?
neighborhood, that immediate neighborhood before we discuss. And then take a look at what the input was from that survey.
Yeah, and I think it's okay to mention that, one of the potential considerations is a putting green, and ask the question, do we feel this is something that's gonna be utilized? And
I would put a putt-putt golf in, just a couple options. Just so people,
yeah,
My concern is the cost. So if we do this, how is that gonna impact our budget? What are we not gonna do
Oh,
if we do this? So
isn't this part of the grant?
The putting green would not be part of the grant, but we're estimating about $2,000 for something like this,
Oh, okay. Well, that's,
depending on what it is, of course.
2,000, yeah.
I was thinking about
The
Have you ever
larger,
priced- have you ever
the more
priced- have you ever
scenery you
priced-
get.
Have you ever priced these?
We were pricing one of these.
Okay, yeah, they're not cheap. Trying to convince my wife I need one of those at the cabin.
I'll send you some links.
what a pun.
Great. No pun intended. Okay, so is there a consensus that we get input from the,
Yes.
okay,
All right,
all right.
easy done.
All right, next, the survey results. Been kind of talking about some of them along the way here, but
Yes, and Chair, committee members, I did not have a formal presentation. We sent the survey results to you a week ago, a little more, maybe a little less than that. But the real idea of just seeing what the committee's feedback is. What are your key takeaways? What are your insights? Do you have any straightforward recommendations from council? And instead of having it on my notebook, I thought I'd use a bulletin board so we can see what each other's thoughts are. I'll just transcribe what the committee is thinking on my bulletin board here, just so we can see it in real time. And if there's anything that I may have misinterpreted, or if something we don't necessarily agree on, or we change our minds on something, we can just cross it off and make sure that we're having a collective feedback on the survey results.
any thoughts, comments?
You mentioned it earlier in the meeting, but one thing I had circled is just the requests for maintenance. So and along with that, like, my question was like, how can we help? Like, again, like, I'm willing, as part of this committee, to go out and take park inventories. It seems like that was a lot of the feedback on maintenance. Hey, our picnic tables are wood and they're deteriorating. Hey, our benches are wood and they're deteriorating. So I don't know if people didn't mention the specific park in their comments, if you generally sent out maintenance in response to this to check on the maintenance concerns or mulch depth and things like that, that were like safety concerns that were mentioned too. So I don't know if you can speak to that.
I'd be happy to answer that question. I will say we're in somewhat of a transition. So in early of this year, we did transfer the parks maintenance over to our Public Works Department. Prior, that was managed by our Parks and Rec Department within our Parks Recreation budget. So we did put that under the people that actually are on the grounds, that are on the mowers, that are actually putting the mulch on there. So then when they're out in the field, they can make those assessments right offhand instead of confirming with either me or whoever happens to be in this position to see if they have enough budget for it. They're able to make those decisions because they're a concern of safety. So we've seen significant progress over this last summer, but we know there's more to be improved, and we've adjusted our 2024 budget to make sure that we're continuously maintaining our parks or open spaces or any areas to the level that they need to be for a safety concern. So I think we're going to see even a bigger shift in 2024 because now we actually have the funds to really do those things that need to be done.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, for me, a couple of takeaways for me is one that overall, I would say people were pleased with Victoria, with our park systems, with our open spaces, with the cleanliness. Overall, there were a couple spots that wanted cleaning up. So it seemed like they were proud of Victoria and the work that's been done for our parks and pleased with that. And the second takeaway was the trail gaps. Obviously, the trail gaps. And we've talked about this many times. And we know, and the residents have validated that the trail gaps are a very high priority, which always leaves us with, how do we do that? Because it's millions of dollars to do those gaps. And it seems like we're stuck because we've been talking about it for 3 years that I've been on the committee. We've identified the priorities of the trail gaps, how they would, in what order, but we haven't seen any movement on moving those. Although I will say Bavaria got done, so that was nice. So I don't know where we go from here.
Halfway.
Yeah, I don't know where we go from here.
I mean, yeah, like the fund, like, I know that the funding comes from council, so if this is something that we're supposed to bring to council, it's like, we need to find funding for the trail gaps, because on the question that said, like, choose amenities features you would like to see constructed or developed, that was the question I brought up last time that I was really disappointed didn't actually have the words trail gap, because number 2, what came through as a result of ranking after pools, outdoor pools, was trails, but it didn't address trail gaps. So then all the comments was every single trail gap that, you know, this neighborhood to this neighborhood, this park to this park, like, that's where, well, that was like all listed under other. So, yeah, again, it's the fun, like, then how do we find the money in the budget and then prioritize again?
I guess we can talk about probably we can bring it up here, but I think this needs to be a continual discussion of this group. And you've said 3 years, it's been 5 years since I've been on.
Yeah.
And the group before I know had been working on this, and it's a continuous project. And we asked last year, when interest rates were low, is this the time to bond and actually get this done? And there was a number of other city projects that took priority, which, you can't do everything, but if we're really going to address what the community wants, we have to devise a better way, because those on this committee know that even though there's funds set aside each year for this, it takes a while to accumulate enough to actually get any of these done. Now, I must say that the city has done a really good job of when new developments come to try to link, one of our trail gap things was Cochia. Well, that was accomplished by the developers. By the city working with the developers and this committee to make sure there was a trail through there. So that one kind of solved itself. We didn't have to lay out dollars for that, but there's some big ones that we just need to figure out how to do it. And I think we've shared with the council before that, we're all going to be dead by the time we get all these five priorities done, unless there's development on that road, on these roads, and some of them are already developed, and some of these roads may be redone, and at that time it may be cheaper to put in a trail. But you're right, we need to address that. And that was very clear to me in this survey, that I see that from the comments that was for the people that filled this out, that was a major concern. And the other thing was for safety. Our community is growing. There's more traffic. Nobody wants their kids driving on their bikes on the road or pushing their kids in the stroller on a street to get to the next part of the trail. There's new developments that are south of town and west of town that don't have a clear path into the whole system yet. So, and we've identified those trails. It's the funding that's kind of holding us up. So maybe a good discussion at our next meeting, just focus on that and brainstorm ideas. And then I think we need to approach the council with, here's some potential solutions or ideas, and drive home the point, because that's certainly what we're hearing.
Could we get like a tutorial on like how to look for trail grants? Like, I don't know, like I would go out and go online and look for funding and potential grants we could apply for, but I don't know where the like appropriate, resources are for that.
Amanda, one of the meetings before you came on board, we had the city finance person come and talk about different options. Didn't specifically talk about types of grants, but talked about, whether bonding was possible, whether there was two or three different things that was kind of an educational program to us regarding that. And maybe I assume we archive those meetings, so maybe you can ask Alyssa to find that for you and just watch that presentation to give an idea on the public financing options. As far as grants go, I think there was some discussion we had on that too, and we did have one grant for $150,000 we got, and we ran into a problem with one of the landowners didn't want to give the right of way or wanted to use that for a negotiating tool, and so we ended up losing that grant, which was unfortunate. Anyway, I would suggest again the next meeting we just focus on trails again, and I think, Alyssa, what I hate to keep saying what we did in the past, because I'm one that always wants to look forward. But one thing I think that's been helpful that we did in the past is we had kind of a regular review of those trail gaps. And oftentimes they don't change, but as our community grows and there's more people that are in different areas, it doesn't hurt to revisit that to make sure we aren't missing something. And again, I think we had 5 priorities. One of them's done, or maybe 2 of them are done. There's three big ones left. And Yes.
Chair, I believe typically the trail gap discussion is usually January, February, March. I was tentatively scheduling it for that, but is this something the committee would like to talk about sooner?
I'd like to move it up sooner, just things happen and to reevaluate and, yeah, I'd move it up, please.
And a lot of times it's taken more than just one meeting.
Yeah, usually.
The other thing, if we wait too long, then the funding options are, budget's out, we're screwed for another year, excuse me, but.
I'd be open to pushing it up based on the survey results and the comments and importance people placed on it.
Okay, other comments?
The other thing that I learned, a couple comments about, we're the city of parks and lakes, but is there access to the water? So one of the questions asked, what would you like added to the park system? 4 of the 5 things outside the trails, 4 of the other things were all water related. So it was outdoor pool, indoor pool, a beach, or a splash pad. So it says a lot. And granted, we just came off a really hot summer, so that might have to do something with, people trying to find a way to keep cool in the summer. But I have, since I moved to Victoria 5 years ago, that is one of my concerns, is not having a public place to swim, or access to water in the summer. Wasserman has been good now having that access to water, but there's not a place to swim there. So other cities have just, I came from Eden Prairie. There's a lot of options for swimming in Eden Prairie. So if there's a way to somehow find it.
Do we have, does the city own any shore, Alyssa?
Nothing that's considered swimmable, or at least within that swimmable beach kind of look. I believe in the 2005 to 2020 Parks Master Plan, Pearson was kind of earmarked as the future beach location for us whenever we reach to that spot. The other piece to consider is the DNR does limit activities on bodies of water. So a majority of our lakes, there are a few, Lake Minnetonka, we're on the border of Bavaria, but those are the only 2 that are really considered recreational. The other ones are considered more natural, and I believe there's a 3rd type, and I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but those are more geared towards your fishing, your hunting, if you're rural enough, your nature preserved areas, where Pearson's, Lake Minnetonka, Bavaria, those are really made for those recreational activities.
I wonder if this is another topic, just the whole water. I mean, there was a number of ideas, and I think if we had a discussion, I think pools have come up before, and the cost was given that seemed prohibitive at the time. I don't know that we took a deep dive, it was more a question. And it was quite costly. I think there was, back 5-10 years ago, there was a study done. There was some group, and at that time, a decision was made not to go forward with it. But our community continues to grow. I think we need to just have a discussion. What are the pros and cons? I don't think we should just look and blow it off because of cost. I think if it's something that there's a high demand for in our community, then it behooves us to find a way to make it happen. Whether that's donations or grants of some sort or bonding or whatever it is. But I think.
Well, yeah, I mean, so to have a discussion on all the water things, like whether it be a pool, indoor, outdoor, or a splash pad option.
Right.
Or, I mean, it doesn't sound like we have a beach option, but.
I just think we discuss them all, and we come up with the pros and cons of each one, and maybe that's how we all discuss it, and we might come up with an idea, because.
And I think out of respect for the people that took the time to take the survey, I think it is, and water was a big portion of that, I think it would be respectful to include that, to have a separate discussion, to delve into that a little bit more on what our options are or not, or the whole parameters around that.
Yeah, because did you see the demographic? It was those that had kids under 18, 64.8% of respondents to the survey had kids under 18. And then the age group really that took this survey was like the parents of those kids in the community. So in that respect, it's not very surprising that what rose to the top were these like kid, indoor playground and playground was right after splash pad. So it's not really surprising that that's their asks and their wants or needs.
That said, I think it also would be important for us to acknowledge that this survey is not a scientific survey. We can't extrapolate the results of this survey to the population as a whole. I think at best we can use it as an indication of people who filled out the survey, what they're, all we can do from a conclusion standpoint is say that the 230 people or whatever it was that completed the survey, those 230 people believe this. And again, because it wasn't done scientifically, we can't extrapolate. Might give us an idea. Good direction, but I don't think we, I don't think staff wants to stake their career on this particular survey.
It's not carved in stone.
But it gives us an indication of things to discuss further and maybe explore further and see if there's a broader need. So.
And what I can do, because it is an interesting read, I will send the 2016 pool study. It's almost a positive thing that it didn't go through because it would have been located where our beautiful pickleball courts are now. But I'll send that out just to give you all just an understanding of what was the study, what did it look like, some of that background. And it does have the finance piece on there because to Chair's point, you're right. If the community wants it, then there's a part where we need to discuss funding. But I think that is a piece to it as well.
Alyssa, is there any opportunity, I know you already partner with the school district for the rec center, for the ice rinks. And, it wasn't that long ago that the school district put in a brand new pool at Pioneer Ridge Middle School. And I was looking at that the other day, the funding for that was around 8.5 million. And that's a very new, that was put in because of a piece of the referendum a while ago. But is there an opportunity to offer open swim? Right now it's mainly used for, of course, school, and then the swim teams, Chaska, Chan, as well as West Express, I believe it's called. So there's obviously blocks of time that are specific to those teams and those needs, but has it ever been an opportunity or a ask if there's an option for example, and I know it's hard because it's not in Victoria, but again, Eden Prairie Park and Rec runs the pool programming at Oak Point Elementary School, right? So lifeguards and swim instructors are staffed from Eden Prairie Park and Rec, but the pool is at an elementary school. So I just don't know if that has ever been considered or asked about.
I would have to look. From my knowledge, no, it hasn't. And that's definitely something, as we continue with this water body conversation, I think that's something worth exploring to see, because there's a piece of that where, yes, you would lose the name recognition of being in Victoria, but if people are comfortable with taking that drive to have some access, I think that's definitely something worth exploring. There might have been something like that done in years prior that it's not to my knowledge, and that could have been part of the study too, but from my knowledge, no, we have not.
Yeah, and that pool in particular wasn't even,
Right.
I don't believe it was here in 2016. I believe it got built in 19. If
Okay, why don't we, I'm just gonna interrupt here, why don't we hold, I think this is another agenda item, and an important one that I think we need to have. So I would suggest that in a future meeting, we don't necessarily, don't do the trails and the pool the same day. But, you know, next upcoming meetings, we spend, you know, one on trails and gaps and another one on pool. Water, yeah, excuse me, that would be better, water amenities. And it seems like the other one here that's been discussed, that I had the two things we just talked about, but the other one is maintenance, you know, the upkeep, that we have a plan in place, so maybe we could spend another meeting talking about just in general how, what the plan would be to stay on top of that, because I know in the past when we brought that up, there weren't enough dollars to meet that need, and I know the last couple times that I presented to the council, I also brought up that point that we were concerned about the upkeep of parks, and I know that as a result, the city added some dollars in, but you know, whether that's adequate or not, I don't know, but we can maybe have that discussion at a future meeting too. So is there anything else that we'd have, or?
Well, I do have a question. So so a lot of what we're talking about is funding and getting council's ear towards funding. When does council make their budget?
Great question, and I think this is a great question for all residents, no matter if you're in a committee or not. So the budget process for council starts practically in June of every year. However, they don't finally set their budget until the end of the year. Now, there's some caveats to that. There's a long timeline, obviously. There's also something that's called max tax. So every September, council has to formally set, this is the maximum levy amount. You cannot go above that. You can obviously go below. You can cut things from when the budget is set in December from that September amount. We've already surpassed the max tax amount, and now they're just looking at finalizing the budget. But really, we're starting that process in June.
Okay, Larry, that's your job.
And I will say, these are definitely some things we can recommend. I don't want to send the committee on some goose chases before council takes a look at the survey results as well, and making sure that their recommendations, that they look at your recommendations, and then they look at the survey results, and then they kind of let us know, are we on the right path? Should we be looking somewhere? Are there things that we're missing? So before we start really delving into some of these topics at the next meeting or the meeting before that, I think getting a good pulse check from council is kind of that first step. And obviously Trail Gaps is already on our agenda for the next couple of months, so we'll just move that forward.
So I think that our recommendations from this group would be that our take on the survey is there seems to be an indication of several main areas being trail gaps, water, and maintenance. And that I also would point out, and I'm guessing the council would also understand this, that we can't extrapolate this to the full population. It's just an indication at this time of the opinions of 240 people that completed the survey.
And one other takeaway I just would say on the survey was that some groups seemed to feel like there was a lot of programming for seniors and not so much for little kids and middle-aged, you know, the teen, you know, low teen, preteen group. And so I would like to explore that a little bit. I things pop in my head like the indoor play area one for young kids, and I'm thinking rock climbing for the older kids. And you know, just it's an activity where you could put it, I have no idea, but the inclusivity of meeting the needs of all age groups.
And that would probably be a good part of we talked about reviewing the audit of the programs available.
Right.
So that really goes with that, I think, well.
Those sorts of things are really popular. I know our grandkids, we've taken them several times to the Edinburgh, the indoor. That place is just packed constantly. And that's that kind of the next age group up. It's used a lot. But
that-
anyway, that's a good discussion item.
That comment kind of surprised me because I don't know, is that a slime on pickleball or what? Because it's like, I wasn't really sure where that comment was coming from. It just kind of surprised me.
I will say, we have a majority of family-oriented programs, majority of our programs, if you look at our recreation book, are specific towards family and younger children. We do, the senior advisory has talked about ways that we can improve the senior programming. They've definitely made an effort this year, so we've definitely seen more programming with our Medicare workshops. Our Donuts in Victoria series came out of those discussions, so maybe that's kind of a result of that, as we're seeing more, but we're not lowering the amount of family-based programming that we do offer. But I think it's a good discussion, again, on that auditing takeaway, that exercise that we were talking about, just to see where we're at. And I think part of that is what age groups do some of these programs really geared towards?
Okay, anything else? If not, do you have enough information that you can pass to the council for us?
I think so. I'm just gonna recap some of my notes shorthand, just to make sure I'm on base and I'm actually providing the committee's thoughts to council accurately. So the first one I have on here is maintenance and really ensuring that we're maintaining to a high standard, not just base level standard, but a high standard to make sure that we truly are the city of lakes and parks, from what we say we are. I think we also want to highlight some of the words I heard throughout was enjoying the park system, that we're proud of what we have for our park system. So continuing kind of what we're doing, but enhancing what we're doing. There's an important of trail gaps, specifically finding some funds for those trail gaps, because we know where they are, for sure. It's just making sure they get done. Public access to water, looking at our beaches, our pools, any sort of thing that we're incorporating some water features into when we're looking at parks in the future, or some of the parks we currently have. And then providing new and a variety of recreation programs, and I think we've touched on that quite a bit as a committee. But is there anything else I'm missing? Is there anything that I misunderstood? Anything at all?
I don't think so. All right, good with that? Okay, we'll just take a consensus that I think we need to vote on that, okay? With that, we've come to the end of our agenda. Thank you. We took a little longer this evening, but we had some good things to discuss, a good discussion. So with that, is there a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn?
Okay, is there a second?
I second.
Okay, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're done. Thank you, everyone.